Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are standing still in the middle of a mist-laced fern valley surrounded by sleeping giants. You don't breathe too loud, something ancient might still be listening. A cluster of eggs rests in the soft soil ahead, each larger than your head, each guarded by a motionless form, feathers stirred by the breath of evening wind. And just on the edge of hearing is that a sound, a humming. Not quite bird, not quite mammal, and definitely not silence. It's not your imagination, it's song. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And if you're in the mood to share, post your location and your local time in the comments. I always like to see who's out there watching with me. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along a flattened trail of damp leaves, careful not to step on anything that might be a nest, though. The truth is, you're about 75 million years late to disturb anyone. But you feel the quiet like a held breath, and then you see her, an oviraptorid locked in stone, crouched above a ring of eggs. Her arms spread in a protective embrace, feathers still faintly arched like the ribs of a fallen tent. It looks like devotion. Or maybe tragedy, or both. The name oviraptor literally means egg thief. That's the joke. For decades, people thought this dinosaur was caught red-handed over a stolen meal. But the fossil found with her arms fanned over her own eggs, not someone else's, has since flipped the story. Maybe she wasn't raiding nests. Maybe she was guarding them. And maybe she was doing more than that. Maybe she was singing. That's where tonight's lullaby begins, with a mother, some eggs, and the unprovable idea that prehistoric parenting wasn't just about warmth, but about voice. There's a pattern to it even now. Some birds hum, crocodiles rumble. You've probably never met a goose who kept her opinions to herself. Why not assume that dinosaurs, their ancestors, and cousins had their own nighttime sounds? Here's your first odd little fact. The lyrebird, which mimics chainsaws and camera shutters, also makes soft harmonic songs to its unhatched young. It doesn't sing for humans. It sings for its eggs. And if that kind of behavior exists now, maybe it's always existed, just in different forms. Quieter, heavier, feathered. So back to the nest. You lean in. The skeleton's jaws are open slightly. That could be from the weight of sediment, or it could be what paleontologists call a death pose. But if you're feeling a little poetic, and you should be, tonight, maybe she was mid-hum when the ash fell. Maybe the forest shivered, and she stayed whispering something ancient into the buried future. Scientists know that oviraptorosaurs had complex airways, some even with elaborate crests that may have functioned like brass instruments. Not for roars or snarls, but for deep, rich resonance. Think didgeridoos. Think throat singing. Low-frequency sound travels farther and seeps into the earth. It wouldn't have taken much to reach an embryo curled in a shell. And here's your historical fact. A 2020 study of oviraptorid nesting sites revealed that some adults were positioned directly above clutches in brooding postures, not off to the side. The feathers on their arms may have helped with insulation, but possibly also with acoustics, like soundproof curtains, or maybe megaphones. So you step a little closer, careful not to imagine the egg cracking beneath your foot. You think about what this valley might have sounded like. Not roaring, not crashing, but a canopy of low notes, parents humming, drumming, rumbling to their unborn young. Historians still debate whether these behaviors were truly vocal or incidental. Was it intention, or was the sound a side effect of breathing or thermoregulating? But that's the beauty of speculation. It's not about what's provable, it's about what fits. And it fits, because parenting at its core hasn't changed much in 75 million years. There's always been a kind of sound language in those who protect and those who wait to hatch. You picture the oviraptor slowly shifting her weight, turning her head to listen for predators, then murmuring again into the soil. No lyrics, No lullabies as we'd know them, but a kind of prehistoric white noise. Warmth made audible. Now, here's your second weird detour in parts of Papua New Guinea. Human mothers hum continuously. Not songs, just vibrations when carrying infants through dense forest. It soothes the child and warns off others without needing to shout. It works because you feel it before you interpret it. Maybe that's all she was doing too. The moon is rising now over your shoulder. It glints faintly off the fossilized eggshells, just enough to make you squint and pretend they aren't fossilized at all. Just sleeping, just waiting. One of them twitches maybe. Or maybe it's a trick of the breeze and the hour and your own tired mind. You lean back against a rock and close your eyes. The hum continues somewhere beneath the dirt. You don't need to understand the words. That's the point. You're not the one it was meant for. You wake, or maybe you never slept and the forest hasn't changed. Still, the same darkness softened by ferns, still the same hush stretching from horizon to root. But now you're paying attention. There's a weight to the air here. Not oppressive, not dangerous, just dense. Like sound is being held in the branches folded carefully in the hollows of bark and bone. You walk forward a little slower now, as if afraid of disturbing what might still be listening. The crests begin to appear. Not on trees or rocks, but fossil skulls, oviraptorosaurs, protoceratops, and the occasional flamboyant citipati. Their heads shaped like half-finished instruments. Their bones are strange even by dinosaur standards. Openings, hollows, air sacs tucked between sinuses and spine. All signs of an ancient design you weren't invited to understand. But here's your historical fact. Many oviraptorids had complex cranial crests that weren't just for show. Inside winding passages connected to nasal cavities like the inside of a trombone left in a jungle too long. These structures probably allowed them to produce low-frequency sounds deep and resonant, perfect for echoing through dense vegetation. Think whales, but with feathers. Think elephants if they laid eggs and wore mohawks. And here's your off-topic trivia of the night giraffes. Despite their long necks, don't really moo or roar like you'd expect. They produce infrasonic rumbles so low you need special microphones to hear them. It's like their language is buried in the ground, a little like what you're exploring now. Back to the crests. You crouch beside one of the fossils, peering into a cracked and sediment-filled nasal dome. It's strange to think of bones having voices, but that's what they were built for? You tap the crest gently with your knuckle. It's stone now, of course, but in life this would have hummed with the weight of a breath pushed just so. Not a scream, not a honk, something deeper, something maternal or paternal. Historians still debate whether these crests were used primarily for communication mating display or something more intimate like brooding behavior. Was the sound public or private warning or comfort? The trouble with prehistory is that everyone's already left the room and you're reading the note they scratched into the floor with a claw. But let's imagine. You picture an oviraptorid kneeling over her nest head angled down. The crest isn't upright, proud, or loud. It's angled forward, humming into the space between her beak and the eggs. Low tones spiral out of her mouth and loop through the chambers in her skull before slipping into the soil. It's not music, not in the way we know it. But it's closer to a lullaby than anything else this forest has heard. And maybe it wasn't just her. Some theories suggest these animals gathered to nest in colonies much like seabirds today. Whole fields of eggs, dozens of adults, all murmuring crests puffing and deflating in a rhythm older than speech. Imagine that an ancient choir humming together under the stars, voices tuned not for melody, but for resonance. A lullaby layered like moss. You pass another fossil, this one smaller, likely a male. His crest is narrower, more streamlined. Maybe that made his tone higher, or maybe he sang backup. The idea of vocal brooding isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. Crocodilians, distant cousins of dinosaurs, Use low-frequency vibrations during courtship and parenting. Alligators literally bellow underwater to attract mates, and mothers call softly to their young even before they hatch. Birds do it too. A zebrafinch will whisper sing to its eggs in hot conditions, helping to regulate the chick's development. So why wouldn't a dinosaur try a similar strategy? Of course, we'll never hear those calls. No record of sound survives the fossil record. But the shape of a resonance chamber, the width of a crest, the wear on the vocal structures, we can read those. And they all suggest potential. The potential for communication that wasn't about territory or threat. The potential for sound as comfort. Here's your quiet joke for the hour. Imagine telling someone in the 1950s that one day we think the egg thief dinosaur was basically a prehistoric lullaby machine. They'd laugh or throw a fossil at you. But science is a slow revelation, like sound through fog. It doesn't yell its truth, it hums it softly repeatedly until it's impossible not to hear. So you keep walking deeper into the fossil forest. Each skull you pass is another silent speaker, a mute chorus lined up in the leaf litter. You try to hum back. You don't know the tune. That's okay. It was never for you. The trees thicken again and the path narrows. The air smells of wet stone and ancient dust. In the hush between your steps, you start to notice it, a deep pressure in your ears. Not painful, more like standing too close to a bass speaker with the volume turned low. You can't hear it, but you feel it, like the ghosts of those old crests still vibrating underground. You reach a clearing. In the center is a nest, a replica perhaps reconstructed by hopeful paleontologists, or maybe just placed here by time's own slow hand. Inside are eggs, not cracked, not fossilized, just resting, waiting. You kneel, and maybe, just maybe, you add your own hum to the mix, not because it'll matter, but because the silence here doesn't feel empty. It feels expectant, like the forest is still listening. You don't stand up right away, you sit with the nest, letting your legs go numb beneath you. You trace a circle in the dirt with one finger, careful not to touch the egg's fossil or replica or something older still. The forest around you has gone completely still, as if waiting for a note to finish ringing. Then you hear it. Not sound exactly, more the idea of one. A rhythm you feel at the base of your skull, a pressure behind the eyes. It's the kind of thing you'd mistake for a headache if you weren't in a place this quiet. There's a theory only half accepted by the scientific community that certain nesting sites in the Cretaceous period were chosen not just for warmth or cover, but for their acoustic properties. Shallow basins, soft soil, dense vegetation. Places where vibrations would linger longer than expected. Think of it as a natural amphitheater, but for someone whose audience is underground. Tonight, your historical fact is this: fossilized oviraptorosaur nests have been found in tight clusters across what's now Mongolia and China, with over a dozen adults within just a few meters of one another. These weren't randomly scattered breeders, they were colony nesters, like albatrosses or emperor penguins. Except these ones may have been humming lullabies into the dirt. So you picture it, a wide fern-choked clearing lined with shallow depressions, each one filled with eggs arranged in near-perfect circles. Adults crouched above them, not moving, not hunting, just still. Every now and then one lets out a low breath that carries no farther than the edge of its own nest. And then another replies, and another. It's not loud. That's the point. This was never about noise. It was about reassurance. But here's your weird side fact: the kakapo. A flightless parrot from New Zealand uses a low-pitched booming call that travels for miles. It doesn't rise above the trees, it rolls through the underbrush. It's felt more than heard. Not a screech, a pulse. Something the plants probably feel too. And the kakapo, by the way, is nocturnal, just like this forest feels. Now imagine being an embryo in one of those oviraptor nests. You've got your tiny clawed feet curled around your beak. You can't see. You can't move much. but you feel something, a tremor in the shell, a rhythm that never quite leaves. It's like being cradled by sound, a voice that doesn't speak words but keeps repeating the same frequency over and over. Safe, safe, safe. Historians still debate whether these communal nesting sites had any vocal significance. Some claim it's coincidence that acoustics weren't part of the decision, just shelter. But the more you sit here, the more you feel like the ground is holding memories in it. And memories often hum. You finally stand, legs tingling, and brush the dirt from your palms. The path ahead is narrow, carved through ferns taller than your head. The air is wetter here, heavy with decay and life and something else. You stop again. There's a shape ahead. Another nest. This one's different. It's deeper. The eggs are arranged in an almost ritual pattern, each tilted inward as though listening. You crouch beside them, not touching, never touching, and notice small, regular indentations in the soil around the edges. Claw marks. Possibly. But more interesting are the concentric rings of packed earth, as if something walked slow circles around the nest, again and again, maybe singing. You picture the parent, father, or mother. It doesn't matter, circling slowly, head low, crest vibrating. The sound wouldn't echo, it would sink. It would nest with the eggs, in a way that's more intimate than anything loud. It's like whispering a story to someone who hasn't been born yet. You close your eyes again, and the sounds come not real, but imagined. The creaking rhythm of old air sacs inflating. A hum carried through feathers. A low thrumming note that might never have left the ground at all. And beneath it, the softer thumps of others replying. Here's where it gets odd. Some researchers believe that certain dinosaur eggs may have been slightly porous to vibration. Not just heat or gas exchange, but physical motion, sound waves. If that's true, and there's evidence in the layering of some fossilized shells, then these songs may have literally shaped the embryos. Taught them safety, taught them tone. There's something sweet about that. Something terribly ancient and human at the same time. Your foot brushes a smooth stone and you freeze. It isn't a stone, it's an egg half sunk in the ground. Whole, uncracked. You don't move for a long moment. Maybe it's fossilized. Maybe not. Maybe this whole forest is one giant nursery and you've just stepped into the world's most patient waiting room. You whisper without meaning to, just a hum. Nothing fancy, a tone you once heard in a subway tunnel or between radio stations. You don't expect a reply, but in the distance the trees rustle. A wind stirs, or maybe something else does. And you remember that this whole journey started with a single fossilized pose. A mother frozen mid-protection head, lowered, arms spread. They called her a thief once, but tonight she's a lullaby. You take one slow step back from the half-buried egg, your heel sinking a little in the moist earth. Nothing cracks, nothing moves. But something lingers like the ghost of a vibration still clinging to the inside of your chest. You exhale, and it feels like the hum is still inside you. There's a rhythm to the forest now, a low pulse hidden under leaf and moss. It doesn't feel like a heartbeat. It feels more like a drum played through the soles of your feet. You start walking again downhill this time, and the air gets cooler, softer. A stream somewhere gurgles over ancient stones, but even that sound feels hushed. The ground is telling the story tonight. And tonight's story is about the kinds of lullabies you don't hear with your ears. Your historical fact in modern bird studies, researchers have found that low-frequency vocalizations can cause vibrations in the environment that serve as communication signals, particularly during nesting. These vibrations are often more reliable in dense habitats where sound waves get muffled by vegetation. That's the kind of environment you're in now. The kind dinosaurs might have preferred for their brooding rituals, not just for safety, but because it was perfect for quiet conversation through the earth. You walk slowly through what might once have been a nesting basin. The soil is slightly hollowed, a depression in the landscape where water might have pooled, or where dozens, maybe hundreds of dinosaurs could have gathered during the warmer months. You imagine them settling in for the season like campers with no tents each guarding a circle of eggs and contributing to a strange seismic chorus. There's a small tree stump beside the trail. It's fossilized wood, carbonized from ancient fire or time. You're not sure, but you sit on it anyway. The forest hums. You hum back. Here's your odd fact for the night. Elephants can communicate over miles using infrasound vibrations too low for humans to hear, but strong enough to travel through the ground. Their feet, not their ears, are the main receptors. They stomp and the message runs like a signal flare through the soil. Warnings, greetings, sometimes even songs. So what if dinosaurs, especially ones built like the oviraptorids, use their own bodies as bass drums, not stomping in aggression but in lullaby? A soft rhythm pressed into the earth felt by the eggs below as a kind of prehistoric heartbeat. A parent's voice not spoken but drummed. You lean forward and press your palm flat to the ground. It's cool. Still. But if you hold still long enough, if your own heartbeat slows, you could almost pretend the dirt is pulsing back. Historians still debate whether such vibrational signaling was purposeful or simply a byproduct of other behaviors. Was it a side effect of nesting, a subconscious comfort, or an intentional act? A prehistoric parent keeping time with life. A breeze moves through the trees above you and scatters a dusting of dried leaves. One lands in your lap. You flick it away without looking. The light is dimming again, wasn't it? Just night? A few paragraphs ago? But time gets strange out here. Slow, looped, like the rhythm of something buried. Ahead, something catches your eye. A partial nest fossilized eggs still nestled in their original position. They're arranged in two concentric circles with a wide gap in the middle. That wasn't for aesthetics. That's where the adult would have sat. Body curved around the inner ring, feathers fluffed, probably vocalizing in some steady guttural way. Like a breathing stone. The shape of the nest tells you everything. It's not a random clutch. It's architecture, repetition, pattern. And where there's pattern, there's purpose. You walk to the edge of it and kneel beside the outer rim. Carefully, you press two fingers to the shell of the nearest egg. It's warm. Or at least your skin tells you it is. Maybe that's the blood returning to your hands, or maybe it's just the pressure of the moment. But you pull your hand back quickly, half expecting the egg to twitch. You exhale. The forest holds its breath with you. And now, a picture forms in your mind of a parent crouched in this exact spot, her whole body curved like a question mark, humming. Not because she wanted to hear herself, but because she wanted someone else to know she was there. That she hadn't left, that it was okay to keep sleeping. It's a vulnerable act, humming to something that can't hum back. That's what lullabies are. And here's the joke you didn't see coming. If human parents today knew, their great-great-great evolutionary cousins once did the same thing, curled around eggs, murmuring through feather and crest, they'd probably feel less alone during those 3 a.m. feedings. Maybe even a little smug. Evolution really does recycle all the best ideas. You stand up again and stretch your legs. The clearing has gone even quieter. The wind has left, or maybe it's just waiting too. And now you wonder, was the lullaby ever just for the eggs, or was it also for the parent? A way to stay sane through weeks of motionless brooding. A song to fill the silence, to push away the creeping edges of fear and hunger. To say, I'm still here even when no one answered. You begin humming again, a sound you make up on the spot. No tune, just tone. A slow, steady vibration you can feel in your chest. You keep walking, and with each step the sound echoes softly through your bones and into the earth. Maybe someone or something is listening. The forest shifts again, not with wind or noise, but with meaning. You start to sense a difference in the shadows, as if the shapes around you have begun listening more carefully. Watching, even. And maybe you've earned their curiosity, because now you're walking not just among the ghosts of mothers, but the possibility of fathers. That's tonight's thread, Dinosaur Dads. the kind who stayed behind. You follow a faint line in the dirt, maybe an old stream bed, maybe a path worn down by feet long vanished. It winds you through a patch of undergrowth that feels strangely deliberate, like someone once paced here, over and over, waiting, and it brings you to another nest shallower than the others. There's a fossil embedded in the earth next to it, no dramatic pose, no arms outstretched. Just curled bones, long hind limbs, the telltale sickle claw that would have been impressive in life. It's a male city potty. You can tell by the skeletal features the crest shape the build. And here's your historical fact: in some oviraptorosaur species, paleontologists believe it was the male who brooded the eggs. Just like in modern ratites, emus, cassowaries, ostriches, where males build the nests, sit on the eggs, and even rear the chicks. It's not speculation. It's deduction based on the number of eggs found under adult males, and the absence of maternal cues like medullary bone which forms in breeding females. So yes, he stayed behind. And that changes everything. Now the forest sounds a little different. You picture a dozen males, each tucked like sentinels over a circle of life. Their voices deeper, slower, made for the kind of sound you don't notice until you're quiet yourself. Here's your odd fact: male frogs in some species carry their fertilized eggs on their backs. Some even tuck them into vocal sacs, holding them close until they hatch, babysitting with their faces, basically. It's weird, but not unheard of. So now you imagine a male dinosaur low to the ground, feathers damp with morning dew, eyes half-lidded as he rumbles softly into the dirt. Not for glory, not for show, but for connection. Because if you're going to raise something out of the mud and into the light, maybe it helps to talk to it first. The idea seems funny at first, this tough, clawed animal humming to eggs. But that's only if you think of dinosaurs as lizards. Think of them more like birds, and it makes sense. Birds are weirdly emotional. Territorial, sure, but also gentle, neurotic, attentive. They murmur, they preen, they sing to things that can't respond. So why wouldn't their ancestors? Historians still debate whether the nesting city potty fossils represent true family units, or were simply found that way by chance. Some suggest environmental burial brought the bones and eggs together post-mortem. Others insist the positions are too perfect to ignore one male skeleton was found with wings, outstretched in a near-complete brooding posture, encircling a clutch like a feathered ring of patience. You walk around the nest, careful not to disturb the sediment, even though it's probably been stoned for longer than mammals have been a thing. The soil is dry here, a different texture than before. You kneel again, brushing away loose debris. The eggs have tiny scratches on them. That shouldn't be possible, but there they are, parallel lines etched faintly into the shell's curve. It could be erosion, it could be claws. But you'd rather believe it's something else, maybe a hatchling responding to vibrations, trying to reach back through the shell toward the only sound it ever knew. The low, steady song of a father. You whisper a note, testing the air. The acoustics here feel deeper somehow, more absorbent. You think of how bass carries through walls while treble gets eaten by curtains. This nest was designed for low tones. You can feel it. And now a terrible question comes. How many lullabies never got finished? How many dads stayed behind waiting, singing even as the smoke rolled in or the predators drew near? Not charging, not fighting, just humming. Because that's what you do when you've promised someone, even if they're still inside an egg that you won't leave. There's something painfully noble about that. And here's your light joke to keep you from getting too sentimental. If this were a modern sitcom, the oviraptor dad would be the overprotective one. Sitting too close, humming too loud, scaring the hatchlings with bedtime stories about sauropods, but they'd love him anyway. You step back, standing now, and look around. The forest has grown dark again, though the sky above still glows faintly. You hear nothing. But the silence has changed. It's not absence, it's reverence. You hum again, one last time, low and steady. And maybe, just maybe, something under the ground hums back. You step softly now as if the forest floor might betray a heartbeat with every press of your foot. There's a strange dignity in the hush, a reverence so complete it feels like you're in a cathedral without walls, where every fern droops like a curtain and every fossil is a hymn locked in stone. And then you see her. Not far ahead, partially buried in sediment and shadow, lies a skeleton posed over her clutch. One arm curved protectively over an arc of eggs, the other half extended almost as if reaching for something that never came. Her skull is tilted downward, beak cracked slightly open. Not in a snarl, not in pain, just open, as if mid-note, as if the ash came down mid-sentence. This is where the oviraptor myth begins and ends. Here's your historical fact: when the first oviraptor fossil was discovered in the 1920s, it was found atop a nest of eggs. Paleontologists assumed the worst: an egg thief caught in the act. The name oviraptor literally means egg seizer, but decades later it turned out the eggs were her own. Her, not some other species. She hadn't been raiding, she'd been guarding, and now she guards still. You crouch beside her fossil. The bones are yellow-gray with age, compacted into the silt like a sculpture made by grief itself. You imagine the moment she stayed when others ran. Maybe the ash cloud was rising. Maybe the tremors had begun. But she didn't move. She pressed her body down, wings splayed to protect her young. And maybe, just maybe, she sang to them one last time. Historians still debate what exactly killed her. Was it a volcanic eruption? A sudden storm? A predator? The sediment suggests rapid burial ash or mud flow fast enough to catch her in place. No time to flee, just time to stay, time to sing. Here's your odd tangent for the hour. In some species of penguins, mothers will remain motionless over their eggs through weeks of snowstorms, even if they're starving. The bond doesn't require thought. It's cellular, reflexive. It's what bodies do when the heart has made a decision before the brain catches up. And that's what you see here. Not a fossil, a decision. You look closely at the eggs, now turn to stone like everything else. Some are cracked, some are whole. You want to imagine that at least one of them hatched before the end, that at least one tiny feathered survivor poked its beak through and chirped, that the song she hummed reached someone. But of course, there's no way to know. You sit back on your heels, eyes fixed on the shape of her spine, the elegant arc of her rib cage. It's beautiful in the way that tragedy is beautiful. Quiet, unwavering, honest. You can almost hear her breath echoing through the air. Sax, the subtle vibration rolling through her hollow crest and into the soil beneath her. It was never about performance, it was about presence. And now the forest feels thicker again, as if drawn inward by the weight of this one scene. The trees lean slightly forward. The air presses closer. Even the insects have gone quiet. You are undeniably not alone. Not in the ghostly sense, but in the realist sense. In the company of devotion. You hum again softly, gently, just a low, breathy note. It's not a song. It's not even good. But it's enough, a kind of acknowledgement, a reply a few million years too late but sent anyway. And here's your gentle joke: if the oviraptor knew she'd be misnamed for the next century, she might have rolled her eyes or whatever the prehistoric version of that was and kept singing anyway. That's what parents do. Misunderstood or not, they keep going. You rise slowly as if afraid to disturb her posture. She'll never move again, of course. But the illusion is so powerful it feels impolite to be loud. A final glance at the nest reveals something small beside her foot. A pebble. A broken shell? No, it's a fragment of beak. Tiny. Curved. Like it came from inside one of those eggs. Maybe she did manage to save one after all. Maybe not. Maybe she stayed long enough to feel the first crack. You take one step back, then another. The path ahead leads you out of the nesting ground and into thicker trees. But the hush follows you. It's not sadness. Not really. It's the kind of silence that comes after a story has ended and the room doesn't quite know how to move on. You keep humming anyway. Because in this forest, silence might be the one thing that doesn't last forever. The trees shift subtly as you walk, bending inward like curious listeners. The forest doesn't forget. Not the hums, not the heat, not the final poses of those who stayed behind. And as the canopy thickens above you, spot another shape in the soil, one that makes you stop mid-step. This one is different. It's not a full skeleton, just fragments, part of a shoulder blade, the edge of a wing bone, and a beak nestled down against fossilized eggs. But the placement is unmistakable. The head rests against the clutch as if the creature simply lay down and never got up again. It doesn't look accidental. It looks like sleep. You crouch beside it, barely breathing. The curve of the spine, the position of the arms. This isn't a creature who died trying to escape. This is one who died mid-embrace. You reach out, hovering your hand just above the stone beak, afraid to even let your shadow touch it. And then you notice the angle of the jaw. Open ever so slightly, just like the others. Caught mid-song. Tonight's historical fact. Several oviraptorid fossils have been found in nearly identical postures, crouched protectively over nests, arms fanned out, heads bent low, and mouths open. Paleontologists believe this wasn't coincidence. This was behavior. These animals stayed with their eggs through disaster, willing to die in place rather than abandon their young. They were parents in every way that word still matters. Now, here's your odd, slightly haunting fact. In 2018, researchers discovered that unborn birds still inside their shells could recognize the calls of their parents. Not just react to sound, but actually differentiate between familiar and unfamiliar voices. And they remembered them after hatching. So maybe, just maybe, these dinosaur embryos knew those voices too. And if so, what happened when the voices stopped? Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had true vocal cords or used other structures like syrinxes or air sacs to produce sound. But based on fossil evidence, particularly of skull cavities and crest shapes, it's clear they had the ability to vocalize in some way. And the consistency of these brooding postures across fossil beds suggests that vocal interaction wasn't rare. It might have been vital. You sit in the dirt next to the fossil. The air here is thick with absence. Not emptiness, just absence. The kind of quiet that follows after something very specific has been lost. And now you notice something that makes your skin prickle. Tiny fractures in the eggs. Not from weathering, not from predation. These are from the inside. As if something began to hatch but never got the chance to finish. Some shells are split just slightly. Others are more aggressively cracked, like the occupant struggled. Tried, failed, or maybe waited too long. You don't move. The silence around you feels like pressure, like the whole forest is trying to listen backward in time. As if the vibrations from those ancient lullabies are still echoing somewhere underground, waiting for someone to acknowledge them. So you hum again, this time longer, deeper. You imagine what it must have felt like to crouch over eggs through night and storm whispering sound into the soil with nothing but hope in your hollow bones. No guarantees, no witnesses, just faith that someone beneath you is listening. And here's your soft joke. If dinosaurs had baby monitors, they'd probably still hum anyway, because no technology replaces instinct, especially when you're made of feathers, talons, and unresolved evolutionary anxiety. You rise, brushing off your knees, and take one last look at the nest. Something about it lingers. The way the head rests so gently, the way the open jaw doesn't scream but sighs. It makes you think less of extinction and more of intention. This was a creature who chose to stay. And as you walk away, you glance back one final time. That open mouth doesn't just look like it was singing, it looks like it still is. Like the sound was never meant to stop, and you've just entered the middle of a lullaby that's been playing for 75 million years. You keep humming, not because you expect a reply, but because that's what lullabies are for, not to be answered, but to be remembered. The forest begins to shimmer, not visually, but sonically. There's a shift in what you're hearing. Or maybe it's in what you're not hearing anymore. The wind has stilled the leaves no longer brush one another like gossiping ghosts, and your own footsteps seem quieter. You pause, pressing a palm to the earth again. This time, it's not about fossils or feathers, it's about shells. Because now you're walking into a place where the eggs, these ancient ovals of calcite and silence, might have done more than incubate. They might have listened. Tonight's historical fact studies of certain modern bird eggs have revealed that embryos can respond to external sounds while still unhatched. They can accelerate development, modulate their heart rate, even begin chirping back days before emerging. It's not just reaction, it's communication. And if that's true for birds, then maybe, just maybe, dinosaur eggs did the same. You're standing now at the edge of a long, low ridge, scattered with fossilized clutches, more than you've seen so far. Rows of them, not jumbled, arranged. Someone or something took care with how these eggs were laid, and beneath the soil maybe something hummed in return. You kneel beside a nest that's partially exposed. The eggs are smooth, oblong, with slight ridges along their sides. Features paleontologists believe could have helped them exchange heat and sound more efficiently. You trace the edge of one with your fingertip and then stop when you feel a faint notch repeating regular. It's not a crack, it's a ring. Maybe a growth ring, or maybe something more interesting. There's a theory, unproven but growing louder in recent years, that certain dinosaur eggshells had microstructures capable of vibrating just enough to carry low-frequency sound from the outside in. Not enough to break or distort the shell, but enough to let the embryo feel the presence of a parent nearby. Like sonar but softer, a prehistoric ultrasound made of music. Historians still debate whether these features were functional or incidental. Some argue the resonance was accidental, just a byproduct of shell thickness and soil acoustics. But others believe it was deliberate, evolved, a mechanism that let unborn dinosaurs hear the world before they were ready to join it. You lean closer, cheek nearly to the soil, and hum again. Just one note, steady and low. Nothing happens. Of course it doesn't. But for a second you feel the hum echo off the shells in front of you. Maybe it's your imagination, maybe it's just your own voice vibrating in your throat, but it feels real. And that's enough. Here's your odd little detour in 2019. Researchers studying zebra finch eggs found that when parents sang certain tones in hot conditions, the chicks that hatched were smaller and better adapted to heat, as if the song itself shaped the body. The lullaby didn't just soothe, it instructed. So maybe those dinosaur hums weren't just comfort. Maybe they were programming. Calibration. A message passed through calcium and silence: grow strong. Grow quiet. Grow ready. You sit back on your heels, eyes on the clutch. What happens when a parent stops singing? The embryos could respond to absence too. Heart rate slow. Development pauses. In some cases, hatching is delayed. It's as if the young know not to enter a world that stopped calling for them. That's the part that keeps you up at night. You imagine the hums growing fainter, a disaster looming, a forest thick with smoke or ash or fear, and beneath it all, a nest full of eggs that wait longer than they should, hoping the song will return. You rise, brushing dirt from your hands. The trees have closed in again, the light narrowing to a soft green dusk. You hear a bird call modern sharp with a digital sort of rhythm. It sounds out of place, like a ringtone in a cathedral. You smile, then hum back. Here's your quiet joke. If dinosaur eggs really did vibrate, imagine being the embryo trying to sleep while your dad's humming on repeat every night. Enough with the lullaby pops, I got it. But maybe they didn't mind. Maybe for them it was the first comfort they ever knew. You walk deeper into the egg field. It feels holy in a way. Not because of what's been fossilized, but because of what almost was. The resonance still hums in the ground, whether from memory or meaning you can't say, but you hear it anyway. And maybe that's the point. Maybe none of the songs were meant to last forever, just long enough to reach someone who needed them. Someone who hadn't even been born yet. The path narrows now, leading you between slabs of stone that once framed an inland sea. The earth beneath your boots feels harder, compacted by millions of years of tectonic patience, but the hum hasn't vanished. If anything, it's become more focused, more subtle, tucked into the edge of hearing like a whisper that knows it isn't meant to be loud. You follow it anyway. And now we drift into the uncertain territory of speculation. Not fossils, not feathers, just echoes. You enter a small amphitheater of rock, natural or not, you can't tell. It's shaped like a sound bowl, the kind you'd strike with a mallet in a meditation studio. But tonight's bowl holds only shadows and stone. In the center, a nest. And around the edge, fragments of crests and skulls like musical instruments placed in storage long ago. You kneel again. The air feels thick here, expectant. Time for your historical fact. Fossilized oviraptorid crests were structurally hollow and connected to their nasal passages, meaning they were almost certainly involved in vocalization. CT scans of these skulls have revealed resonance chambers that, when modeled, suggest deep, low-frequency tones were possible tones ideal for traveling through thick vegetation and, yes, soil. But were they meant for the eggs? That's where the science softens. Here comes the phrase that appears more and more in paleontology papers. Historians still debate whether these tones were intentional signals or simply biomechanical leftovers, byproducts of breathing and movement. Were the dinosaurs singing on purpose or humming out of habit? You hum now just to fill the space. It echoes faintly off the rock and comes back to you slower than expected, rounder somehow. The acoustics are perfect, too perfect to be ignored. It makes you wonder if dinosaurs, especially those that brooded in groups, ever responded to each other's low-frequency calls, not with alarm, but with harmony. Not a warning, a conversation, a chorus. That's the thread unspooling now. You imagine a line of oviraptorosaurs, each on its nest, each humming softly into the evening mist. One begins the rhythm. Another joins. A third hums in reply, adjusting its pitch to blend not louder but deeper. Like the forest is breathing in polyphony. A lullaby not sung to eggs alone, but sung with a colony. A shared language made of vibrations and resonance. And here's your weird tangent whales, humpback whales to be exact. They don't just sing individually, they change their songs together, like an orchestra that rewrites the music mid-performance. And some researchers believe these coordinated changes are socially driven, even therapeutic. Not to communicate something urgent, but to feel together. Like sound therapy, but with barnacle scars. So maybe dinosaurs weren't just broadcasting, maybe they were blending. You sit back against the outer ring of rock and close your eyes. The hum is all you want to hear now, not words, just rhythm. It feels older than language, older than fire, just vibration passed between bodies, passed between soil and egg, passed between lives. You open your eyes and trace the pattern of the nest. It's faint, but you swear you can see concentric grooves in the earth. Not from feet, from motion, as if the adults circled the nest repeatedly, walking, pacing, rumbling a pattern into the ground. Maybe that was part of the song too, not just humming, but movement, the very steps becoming percussion. You press your ear to the soil, and you listen. For a moment you think you hear it, a soft tremor. Nothing sharp, just a hint of pressure. A rhythm like breathing under a blanket. Like something inside the ground is still listening for the sound that once guided it into the world. And here's your gentle joke. If oviraptors really did sing together, it's no wonder paleontologists misjudge them. Imagine trying to take field notes next to a dinosaur choir rehearsal. No wonder they assumed it was noise. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was music, not for performance, not for dominance, just for comfort. You lean back and breathe in. The scent of ancient leaves of mineralized dreams of time stretched too long to understand. The forest has gone completely still now, not with silence, but with the pause between notes. Like the whole world is waiting for the next verse. You hum one last time, and the rock beneath you holds it gently, like a memory, like a lullaby. You're deeper in now, Deeper than bones, deeper than nests, deeper into the idea of sound itself. The forest isn't silent anymore. It's tuned. Every step you take releases something soft into the air, like pressing piano keys with your feet. You don't look for fossils now. You listen for them. Because this part of the valley, this strange scooped-out basin with the canopy pulled tight above, might have been one enormous acoustic space. A kind of natural nursery built not just for shelter, but for song. You step out into a clearing, your boots sinking into damp moss. The ground here feels layered, like there's more beneath you than just dirt. And all around, broken ring nests peek from the soil, cracked eggs like spilled pearls. But they're not isolated, they're arranged in patterns. That's your historical fact tonight. Evidence from late Cretaceous nesting sites in Asia suggests some dinosaurs nested in massive colonies with spacing consistent enough to imply social coordination. The spacing between nests is too uniform to be random. It hints at behavior. Perhaps even communication. And if they could coordinate space, could they coordinate sound? You walk slowly through the center of the clearing, careful not to step on anything that once mattered. The wind shifts behind you, and then you hear it. A low pulsing echo that doesn't sound like wind at all. More like a note. Not from your mouth, from somewhere nearby. You stop breathing. It fades. Then starts again. One tree groans, then another creaks in answer. Somewhere far off, something scurries through leaves. The forest is answering itself. And suddenly, you see it not with your eyes, but with your mind. The image of 100 oviraptorosaurs, each on its own nest, not isolated but entangled in sound. The lullaby wasn't just one way. It was layered, responsive. You picture a parent murmuring to its eggs, then lifting its head just slightly, hearing a low rumble from two nests down. Not a warning, a reassurance. Still here? Another one replies, then another, and before long the whole basin becomes a cradle of overlapping hums, too soft to echo, too steady to frighten. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs truly vocalize to each other during nesting. The anatomical evidence supports the possibility, but direct proof is impossible. No fossil records vibrations. No skeleton captures sound waves. But the shapes are here. The nests, the spacing, the way the eggs are arranged like instruments in a field orchestra. It all suggests a kind of coordination less about survival, more about harmony. And here's your odd modern parallel. Some human mothers sing in groups to their infants, not just for the babies, but to calm each other. In parts of sub-Saharan Africa, and the Amazon lullabies are communal, woven between mothers and children, shared like food. Not performance, presence. So maybe that's what this forest was, a shared hush. A lullaby spread across feathers and shells, across tree roots and echoes with no conductor and no audience. Just participants. You hum low and steady. This time it doesn't feel like a song. It feels like a stitch. Something connecting you to the air, the soil, the scattered ring of nests around you. You crouch beside one, this one still intact. The fossilized shells glisten with mica where the light sneaks through the trees. You touch the ground beside them, and once again you swear you feel it. A soft thrum, like the earth remembers the bass note. And here's your gentle joke. Maybe oviraptors didn't just sing lullabies. Maybe they had complaints too. Whose chick is screaming? Someone tell Glark down the hill to tone it down. Parenting drama but with claws. Even ancient lullabies probably came with gossip. You smile. The image is absurd and perfect. You stand slowly, letting the silence fill the space you leave behind. And now, something clicks. If this basin carried sound, it shared sound. That means an egg didn't just hear one voice, it heard many. A baby didn't hatch to a solo, it hatched into a choir. You take one last slow walk around the edge of the clearing, humming softly as you go. Not to call anything, just to contribute. To remind the stone that it was once part of something alive. And as you leave the bowl of nests behind, you feel it. Not a sound, a presence. Like something is listening, not with ears, with memory. You climb now, not steeply but steadily, as if the earth wants to show you one last view. The air grows colder, not icy, but touched by altitude. You pull your jacket, tighter, boots crunching softly on patches of frost clinging to the shaded side of the ridge. Above you, the trees begin to thin and the sky opens in streaks of pale blue and silver. You reach the crest of a long slope dusted in ancient snow. Not real snow, of course, just the ash-dusted suggestion of a long-gone Ice Age flirtation. And across it, like a painting left for you by time, run a series of perfect tracks. Three-toed, deep, crisp in the frost. You freeze not from cold but awe. The trail stretches across the ridge in a perfect arc, and just at the far edge of it, barely visible through a low mist, is the outline of a theropod. Not one of your singing oviraptors this time, something larger, still bipedal, still feathered, but quieter than you'd expect. You don't move, because tonight's thought isn't about hunting. It's about listening back. Here's your historical fact. Modern bird embryos can chirp from inside the egg in the final days before hatching. Not random noise-specific communication. Siblings in the same clutch will chirp to coordinate hatching times. They learn their own group's call before they're even born. You walk along the prints, careful not to step in them. Each one is a story, a note, a beat in a rhythm too ancient to reconstruct. And all the while, your mind wanders back to those eggs you saw. Could their inhabitants have replied? Historians still debate whether dinosaur embryos had vocal capacity before hatching. No fossil larynx has been preserved well enough to be certain. But if the structure existed and if it echoed modern avian development, then yes, they might have called out from inside. And if they did, what did they hear back? You sit on a boulder near the edge of the ridge, looking out over the valley below. It's blanketed in cloud and ancient echoes. You hum again. The sound is quieter here, pulled thin by the air. But it travels. Maybe that was part of the ritual. You imagine a parent hearing a chirp soft and quick from under its wing. The first response. The first proof that something inside is listening. And maybe the parent hums louder then. Not frantically, but joyfully. Not, "I'm here." More like "you're almost here." Here's your odd detour. Some bird species slow their own hatching process to wait for the rest of the clutch. Coordinated birth, as if they know the others aren't ready yet. And it starts with communication chirps in the dark. You stare at the prints again. Maybe that's what these were, footsteps made during those long days of waiting. A parent pacing the perimeter of the nest, humming down into the ground and listening for a reply. And when it came from inside the shell, they walked faster. Sang louder. You hum back. The mist swirls slightly around the distant silhouette. It doesn't move. You don't need it to. It's not there for action, it's there for memory. And here's your light joke. If baby dinosaurs chirped early and often, those final days before hatchings probably drove their parents up the tree ferns. Not yet, Nugget. I heard you. Sleep now. You laugh softly. The sound disappears quickly in the cold, but it doesn't feel lost, it feels received. You look once more at the trail, then at the print nearest your boot. You crouch and hum directly into it, low and slow, just to see what it feels like. And you swear just for a second you feel the sound return, not in echo, in reply. The mist thickens as you descend the ridge, swallowing the footprints behind you and erasing the silhouette of the silent theropod. The air is colder now, not just from altitude, but from the suggestion of danger, a sharpness to the quiet like something watching with old, patient eyes. You wrap your arms around yourself, because tonight we ask a harder question. What if lullabies weren't always safe? You tread softly along a fallen log bridging two embankments. Beneath it runs a dry stream bed gnarled with roots and ghosted with shadows. You pause halfway, listening. Not just for hums now, but for ears. Because not every sound in the ancient world was meant for comfort. Some were invitations, Others were signals. Here's your historical fact. Low-frequency vocalizations like the ones oviraptorosaurs might have used can travel farther than high-pitched sounds, especially through ground and dense vegetation. That's great for communication, but it also means predators could hear them too, even if they weren't the intended audience. You picture it now, a parent singing softly to its eggs, unaware that the hum is carrying curving between trees, seeping through moss, right into the ears of something sharp-toothed and hungry. A predator who doesn't need sight when sound is enough. Historians still debate whether these vocal behaviors increased risk for nesting dinosaurs. Some argue that communal nesting might have compensated. The more voices, the less chance any one nest would be singled out. Others believe the lullaby was more of a gamble. Comfort versus exposure. Intimacy versus risk. And now for your strange detour moths. Certain species evolved ears that are tuned specifically to hear bat echolocation. They don't use sound to communicate. They use it to detect predators using their sound. Listening becomes defense. Silence becomes survival. So what about oviraptors? Did they know when to stop singing? You step down from the log and crouch beside a shadowy mound, possibly a collapsed burrow, maybe an old nest. It's hard to tell. The soil here is soft, shifting slightly under your touch. You place your palm flat against it and hum. This time nothing comes back. But the forest has changed. There's a new kind of silence now. Not absence, but awareness. Like something's waiting for you to speak too loud. You whisper, "Sorry." It doesn't answer. Because maybe this part of the forest remembers what came next. Imagine the scene: a parent nestled over its clutch, rumbling softly through the night. One egg chirps in response, then another. A beautiful moment until one echo carries just a bit too far. The forest catches its breath, and suddenly, everything is listening. Not just the singers, but the hunters. The tension is real even now. You feel it in your ribs. That line between love and risk, between soothing your young and exposing them. You walk slowly now, quieter than before. Your hums fall silent. The soil beneath your feet feels different, less like a cradle, more like a trap. You pass a ridge of stones that might have once been a nest torn open. No eggs remain, only fragments. You kneel and pick up a shard. It's ridged, curved, still cool from the soil. You hold it like an ear, like maybe it once listened. And maybe it heard more than a lullaby. Here's your joke, though. It comes slow and dark tonight. If dinosaurs had baby monitors, they would have needed predator alarms too. Warning your singing has attracted something with too many teeth. You smile anyway. Because even knowing the risk, you believe they still sang. That's the real story, isn't it? Not that dinosaurs were perfect parents, but that they tried. They hummed into danger, sang through fear, whispered lullabies into the soil, even knowing that sometimes someone else might be listening. You place the shell fragment back and cover it gently with your palm. A final hum escapes your throat, quiet and flat, barely a sound at all. But it feels right, because not all lullabies end in safety. Some just end. And still they were sung. The path grows quieter, and you start to notice the difference between silence and stillness. Silence is the absence of sound. Stillness is the presence of everything waiting. Tonight, the forest is still. You follow a gentle slope downward where the soil becomes soft with age and ferns grow thicker. There's no trail now, just a widening breath in the trees. It feels like walking into the memory of something, not the place itself. And here's where you start to ask the strange question. What happens to a song when time forgets how to hear it? Fossils can tell us many things: what a creature looked like, how it moved, where it died. But what it sounded like, that's the first thing to vanish. Sound doesn't fossilize. It doesn't leave an imprint in stone. It leaves a gap. Here's your historical fact. While we can model vocal ranges using skull cavities, resonance chambers, and comparative anatomy, we will never truly know what dinosaurs sounded like. There are no prehistoric recordings, no ancient echoes trapped in amber. only educated guesses. But guesswork is its own kind of music. You step into a clearing littered with fragments. Bones, yes, but also eggshells. Bits of fern turned to opal, and something stranger, the curve of a crest preserved so perfectly that you can still see the channels where air once flowed. It's beautiful, haunting, and totally, completely silent. You hum again. Nothing answers. Because this is the part of the forest where the song stops. Not because it's over, but because the final note never landed. It was interrupted, covered in ash, swallowed by time. And now all that's left is the shape of music but not the sound. Here's your odd off-topic fact. Some ancient cave flutes found in Germany, over 40,000 years old, have finger holes spaced almost identically to modern scales. That means music, real music, has been haunting humanity longer than agriculture, longer than fire pits, longer than most languages. So maybe music has always been here, and maybe it wasn't just ours. You crouch beside the crest fossil. You touch the edge, cold, smooth, like the bell of a trumpet stopped mid-breath. You imagine the dinosaur that once wore it standing over her nest, humming through her bones and into the earth. What was the melody? Was it repetition? A single note? A series? A phrase passed from adult to egg and back again? And what happens to a song when there's no one left to remember the tune? Historians still debate whether vocalization played a role in mate selection territory or parenting. Some say it was all instinct and noise. Others argue there must have been meaning, that vocal memory helped shape identity even across generations. But meaning doesn't fossilize either. Only implication does. You lie back in the ferns for a moment, letting the forest lean over you like an old cautious friend. The canopy sighs in the breeze. Somewhere a bird calls out modern digital thin. You ignore it. You're not listening for birdsong tonight. You're listening for what isn't there. And now you feel it, not hear it, feel it. A resonance in the earth not made of sound, but of shape. A lullaby lost so long ago that it left a scar instead of an echo, the way old music sometimes makes you cry without knowing why. You sit up slowly, and here's your soft joke: if dinosaur lullabies had been written down, they'd probably look like sheet music scrawled in mud feathers stuck to the edges. No tempo markings. Just one word. Stay. You touch the fossilized crest one last time, then rise. The clearing stretches behind you like a forgotten stage. There are no bones to dance anymore, no shells to crack open. Just the memory of songs that never finished, and the silence that now holds their shape. You walk away without humming, because sometimes remembering the silence is the only way to respect the sound. The path dips lower, drawn now into a hollow that smells of wet stone and old leaves. You follow it without thinking. There's no need to decide anymore. Your feet know the direction the forest has been guiding you gently all along. It's quieter here, but not in the same way as before. This is farewell quiet. You pass under a curtain of hanging vines and step into what feels like the last room in a long-forgotten home. A shallow depression in the landscape circled by stunted trees and fossil stumps, and in the center one final nest. Smaller than the others, sparser, not abandoned, just faded. And here's where we settle in for the end. Your historical fact tonight. By the end of the Cretaceous, many species of dinosaur, including the oviraptorids, were already in decline. Climate shifts, sea level changes, volcanic eruptions. The world was changing faster than the lullabies could keep up. And when the asteroid came, well, it wasn't the start of the end. It was the last verse. You sit at the edge of the nest. There are only 3 eggs left. 2 are cracked cleanly, like their occupants might have made it out. The third is whole, unhatched. And that's the one your eyes keep returning to. Maybe it never got the signal. Maybe the hum stopped too soon. Historians still debate what happened in those final years before the extinction, whether brooding behaviors broke down or if the collapse was sudden. Whether lullabies grew less frequent or if they were sung right to the bitter end. You hum again. It comes out dry. A whisper, like your throat knows it's too late. And here's your odd fact to carry into the hush. In some desert birds, parents stop singing to unhatched chicks when environmental conditions turn hostile, not as punishment, as a message, a quiet one. Not now. Don't come out. Maybe that's what this last egg heard. Or maybe it heard nothing at all. You run a hand over the soil. The texture is finer here. Less like dirt, more like ash. And when you close your eyes, the nest around you becomes a constellation. Each egg a star. Each hum, a line of starlight, connecting a past that never made it into the future. The forest doesn't move now. No echoes, no wind, just the final stillness of a lullaby that ran out of time. And here's your quiet joke, half sigh, half smile if dinosaurs did sing. And if the asteroid silenced the last of the mid-note, the universe must have heard one of the greatest concerts end on a cliffhanger. You reach out and gently place your palm on the final egg. It doesn't hum. But it doesn't feel empty either. You stay there a while longer, not saying anything, not humming, just being. Because the quiet doesn't need filling anymore. It needs remembering. You leave the final nest behind like a candle that has just burned out, walking slow now, not from fatigue but from reverence. The trail back is thinner, more delicate, as if the ground no longer wants to hold the weight of footsteps. Even the trees seem older. Not because of their age, but because of what they remember. You've wandered through fossils and feathers, echoes and silence across nesting grounds and through imagined songs that may have once soothed the unborn. But here in these last steps, you realize something. The song never truly stopped. It simply changed form. The forest opened slightly into a soft slope, blanketed in mist, the kind that blurs the edges of everything. And right in the center, laid bare like a fossil, not yet covered by time, is the idea that started it all. A hum in the dark. A lullaby. A promise whispered by something warm and feathered to something curled and waiting. Your historical fact. Your final one tonight is this: the brooding posture of oviraptorosaurs, with arms outstretched and heads bowed over their eggs, is now considered among the earliest examples of sustained parental care in non-avian dinosaurs. It was once mistaken for theft, but time has corrected the story. They weren't stealing life, they were protecting it. And you followed that sound for what feels like millions of years. You sit again in one final hollow where the soil is soft and the shadows are kind. There's no nest here, no fossil, no track, just space. And the unmistakable sense that this is where something once ended, or began, or both. You hum one last time, and you let it stretch out slowly as long as your breath will allow. Not loud, not insistent, just enough to be remembered. Historians still debate whether any sound from the Mesozoic era would be recognizable today, whether it would be music or noise signal or byproduct. But if lullabies existed, they were not made for history. They were made for closeness, for comfort, for the eggs. You lie back, the earth rising beneath you like an old friend, and let your fingers brush the ferns. They sway slightly, not from wind, but from your own movement, as if acknowledging your presence before you disappear again. Above, the sky is blurred in pastel gray, and somewhere behind the clouds, time continues to move forward without apology. Here's your soft final joke. Maybe the reason we'll never find dinosaur songs is because they work too well. They were sung so quietly, so precisely, that only the unhatched were ever meant to hear them. And we were just eavesdropping. You smile, and you let the forest fade. Because in the end, lullabies are not meant to be preserved. They're meant to work, and then be forgotten, until someone someday hums them again without knowing why. In the hush of the Cretaceous world, nestled deep in forests that no longer rustle, dinosaurs may have sung lullabies not for glory or communication, but for love. This journey followed the soft, speculative song of oviraptorosaurs, misunderstood creatures once labeled egg thieves, now known to have been doting parents. From fossilized poses, arms, outstretched heads, lowered protectively, we traveled through scientific possibility and emotional resonance, exploring how low-frequency sounds could have passed from parent to egg. These were not grand symphonies, but quiet, rhythmic hums, a prehistoric language of comfort. The possibility that eggs could respond, even chirp back, suggests a bond deeper than bones. In nests shaped like orchestras and forests tuned for vibration, perhaps lullabies echoed between trees and through soil, not just as survival tools but as acts of shared hope. Yet not all songs are safe. The hums may have exposed nests to predators. Some eggs may have waited too long for a hum that never returned. In the end, the silence that replaced them became part of the story too. This was not a tale of extinction but of presence, of songs sung into the dark even knowing they might never be heard again. And in the stillness we listen through stone, through soil, through time, not to record but to remember.